Sometimes the greatest mistake is not losing someone. It is believing the lie that made you let them go. Rain drifted across downtown Chicago in quiet silver lines as evening settled over Hawthorne House, a celebrated restaurant where polished wood floors reflected warm amber light and soft piano music floated through conversations that seemed untouched by the restless weather outside. Every crystal glass sparkled beneath elegant chandeliers. Every table had been prepared with quiet precision. Inside that peaceful room, no one imagined they were about to witness a moment capable of changing two lives forever. Evelyn Carter adjusted the black apron over her crisp white shirt and lifted a serving tray with practiced confidence. She moved through the dining room with calm grace, greeting every guest with genuine warmth while noticing the smallest details before anyone needed to ask. She replaced cooling coffee without interrupting conversations, remembered returning customers by name, and smiled with quiet sincerity that never asked for recognition. Years had changed her circumstances, but they had never diminished her dignity. Linda Foster, the restaurant manager, walked across the dining room carrying a reservation tablet. She paused beside Evelyn with an expression that always seemed to search for imperfections. "Please remember that tonight we have important guests. I expect everything to be flawless." Evelyn answered with the same gentle composure she offered everyone else. "Of course." She did not argue. She did not defend herself. She simply continued working with steady hands and peaceful eyes. Outside, a sleek black sedan stopped beneath the entrance canopy. A valet hurried forward as Nathan Brooks stepped onto the sidewalk wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, a white dress shirt, and an elegant Swiss watch that reflected the restaurant lights. The billionaire founder of Brooks Global entered without demanding attention. Success had taught him that true influence rarely needed an introduction. The hostess welcomed him and escorted him toward a quiet table beside the rain-covered windows. Nathan thanked her politely before lifting his eyes across the dining room. Everything stopped. Several yards away stood Evelyn carrying 2 cups of fresh coffee with the same quiet confidence he remembered from another lifetime. She looked up at the exact same moment. Their eyes met across the restaurant. She did not freeze. She did not turn away. She simply offered the same calm professional smile she would give any guest before continuing toward another table. Nathan remained motionless. 8 years disappeared beneath one silent glance. Then, as Evelyn turned, the sleeve of her uniform shifted just enough for him to see the elegant watch he had given her on their 5th wedding anniversary still resting upon her wrist, and suddenly he realized that perhaps the past had never been as finished as he had forced himself to believe. The restaurant gradually returned to its gentle rhythm, but Nathan no longer heard the quiet piano or the soft conversation surrounding him. His attention remained fixed on Evelyn as she moved gracefully from one table to another with the same calm confidence that had once filled the home they shared. She greeted every guest with genuine warmth, remembered regular customers without hesitation, and quietly noticed every small detail before anyone needed to ask for help. A young couple received fresh coffee before realizing their cups were nearly empty. An elderly woman searching for her reading glasses found the menu already open beneath the brightest light near the window because Evelyn had noticed her hesitation from across the room. Every thoughtful gesture appeared effortless. Linda Foster approached carrying a reservation list and stopped beside Evelyn with a restrained but unmistakably critical expression. "Table 14 has been waiting," she said firmly. "Please remember that our guests expect efficiency as much as kindness." Evelyn answered with a gentle smile that never carried resentment. "I will take care of them immediately." She thanked Linda before walking away without the slightest sign of frustration. Nathan quietly lowered his eyes. Years ago he had admired that same remarkable composure during difficult moments, yet somewhere along the path of ambition he had forgotten how rare such quiet strength truly was. Minutes later Evelyn approached his table holding a porcelain coffee pot. "Would you like a refill, sir?" she asked with complete professionalism. Nathan looked at her for a brief moment before sliding the empty cup forward. "Yes, thank you." Their hands almost met as she poured the fresh coffee, but neither spoke another word. As she reached into her apron for the order pad, the fabric shifted slightly. Nathan caught a brief glimpse of a simple gold wedding ring carefully tucked inside the small apron pocket. His heartbeat slowed. He had convinced himself long ago that every symbol of their marriage had disappeared with the divorce. Instead, the ring had remained close to her every single day. Before he could gather his thoughts, a nervous new server accidentally dropped a folded stack of menus near the entrance. The young woman immediately apologized, clearly embarrassed. Without hesitation, Evelyn knelt beside her, gathered the menus with an encouraging smile, and quietly whispered something that made the young employee laugh instead of panic. No guest complained. No attention was drawn toward the mistake. Evelyn simply transformed an uncomfortable moment into one filled with reassurance. Nathan remembered countless evenings when she had done exactly the same for struggling employees at Brooks Global during company events. She had always protected other people's dignity before her own. As Evelyn returned toward the service station, she unknowingly left behind one small folded envelope that slipped silently onto the polished floor beside Nathan's chair. He bent to retrieve it, then stopped the instant he recognized the handwriting across the front. It was addressed in his own name, and the date written beneath it matched the exact morning their marriage had come to an end. For several quiet seconds Nathan remained seated with the folded envelope resting carefully in his hand. The handwriting on the front belonged unmistakably to Evelyn. Beneath his name was a date he had never forgotten, the morning their divorce became final. Before curiosity could overcome respect, Evelyn turned, noticed the envelope, and calmly walked back toward his table. She did not appear frightened or embarrassed. She simply extended her hand with quiet composure. "Thank you," she said softly. Nathan returned the envelope without opening it. "I recognized your handwriting." Evelyn held the letter against her apron for a brief moment before placing it safely inside the pocket again. Some memories become easier to carry than to explain. Before he could ask another question, Linda called from across the dining room. "Evelyn, the private room needs assistance." Evelyn acknowledged her with a polite smile and immediately continued working. Nathan watched her disappear through the doorway leading to a small dining room reserved for a family celebrating their grandparents' 60th wedding anniversary. One of the elderly guests appeared anxious because several relatives had been delayed by heavy rain. Without drawing attention to herself, Evelyn quietly rearranged the seating, asked the pianist to play an old favorite song, found fresh flowers from another display, and warmed fresh coffee before the family arrived. By the time everyone gathered together, disappointment had quietly transformed into gratitude. No one realized who had made the evening possible because Evelyn had already stepped away before anyone thought to thank her. Nathan lowered his eyes as memories returned with unexpected clarity. During their marriage she had always solved problems the same way, gently and without seeking recognition. He began asking himself a question he had avoided for 8 years. If the woman standing only a few yards away had never changed, why had he become so certain she was capable of betrayal? The answer disturbed him because every accusation he remembered had originated from meetings, reports and conversations led by other people, never from Evelyn herself. He quietly reached for his phone beneath the table and called his longtime executive assistant. "I need every archived document connected to the internal investigation from 8 years ago," he said in a calm voice. "Recover every email, every personnel report, every compliance interview and every communication involving Daniel Cross. I want everything reviewed from the beginning." His assistant answered immediately. "I will begin now." Nathan ended the call and looked once more toward the private dining room where Evelyn was helping an elderly woman adjust a family photograph before quietly slipping back into the background. For the first time since their marriage ended, he realized he might never have searched for the truth at all, and somewhere inside the forgotten company archives the missing pieces of their story were still waiting to be found. The rain continued tapping gently against the tall restaurant windows while the evening settled into a quiet rhythm. Nathan remained seated, but his thoughts were no longer inside the dining room. They had returned 8 years into the past, searching for conversations he had ignored and moments he had misunderstood. Every time he looked toward Evelyn, he found the same woman he remembered before success had complicated everything. She moved with quiet confidence, never rushing, never seeking attention, always noticing another person's needs before her own. A little girl accidentally dropped her napkin beneath the table, and before either parent reacted, Evelyn knelt with a warm smile, handed it back, and wished the family a wonderful evening. The child smiled brightly while her parents quietly thanked her. It was another small act of kindness that no one else would remember tomorrow, yet Nathan could not stop noticing them. His phone vibrated softly across the table. His executive assistant had already recovered the first archive from Brooks Global. Nathan opened the secure file and carefully reviewed page after page. At first everything appeared exactly as he remembered. Internal reports. Compliance summaries. Financial correspondence. Then a familiar name appeared again and again. Daniel Cross. Every critical recommendation during the investigation had passed through his office before reaching Nathan. Another document revealed that several employee interviews had been summarized rather than preserved in full. Nathan continued reading with growing concern. A second notification arrived containing recovered email metadata that had never been included in the original review because of an outdated storage system. The timestamps revealed several important messages had been redirected before they reached his executive office. None of those messages accused Evelyn. Instead, they raised questions about irregular financial approvals connected to Daniel. Nathan slowly leaned back in his chair. For the first time, he realized the investigation had never been built upon complete information. Across the room, Evelyn quietly helped an elderly gentleman adjust his chair before serving him fresh soup at exactly the right temperature. She noticed his trembling hands and placed the spoon within easier reach without saying a word. The gentleman smiled with grateful eyes. Nathan remembered seeing that same instinct countless times during charity events years earlier. She had always protected another person's dignity before protecting her own. His phone vibrated once more. A final message appeared from his assistant. One encrypted archive remained unopened because it required executive authorization. The file contained an audio recording from the original investigation that no one had reviewed after it was mistakenly classified under an inactive legal folder. Nathan stared at the notification while the quiet piano continued playing nearby. Something deep inside him whispered that the truth he had searched for too late had been waiting behind that single recording all along. The quiet melody from the restaurant piano continued drifting through the dining room as Nathan unlocked the final encrypted archive on his phone. Outside, the rain had slowed to a gentle mist that blurred the city lights beyond the tall windows. He placed one earbud in his ear and opened the forgotten audio recording. At first there was nothing except the distant hum of an office air conditioner and the sound of papers moving across a conference table. Then Daniel Cross began speaking with another executive whose voice Nathan immediately recognized from the old compliance department. Daniel calmly explained how delaying certain emails and separating Evelyn from important conversations would make every future accusation appear believable. He admitted that if Nathan stopped trusting the one person willing to question suspicious financial decisions, no one would ever challenge his authority again. Nathan closed his eyes. Every word felt heavier than the last because the recording left no room for doubt. The woman he had blamed had never betrayed him. She had been deliberately isolated while someone else quietly manipulated every piece of information reaching his desk. Across the restaurant, Evelyn continued serving guests exactly as she had all evening. An elderly veteran struggled to read the menu beneath the dim light. Before he could ask for help, Evelyn quietly moved a nearby lamp closer to his table, offered a larger print menu, and thanked him sincerely for his service. The gentleman smiled with genuine appreciation while the surrounding guests returned to their conversations. Once again she solved another person's problem without asking anyone to notice. Nathan looked toward her with growing regret. During their marriage she had shown that same quiet compassion every single day, yet he had allowed reports, meetings, and assumptions to become louder than the woman standing beside him. His phone vibrated again with a secure message from his executive assistant. Every archived email had now been reconstructed through the company's backup servers. None of them supported the accusations that ended his marriage. Instead, they documented repeated warnings about irregular approvals connected to Daniel Cross that had never reached Nathan because they had been intercepted before delivery. Nathan slowly placed the phone on the table and looked through the rain-covered window before turning back toward Evelyn. For the first time in 8 years he finally understood that the greatest failure had not been hers. It had been his unwillingness to question the convenient version of the truth. He immediately instructed his assistant to arrange an emergency review with corporate legal counsel and to contact Daniel Cross before sunrise. As Evelyn quietly refilled his coffee with the same professional smile she offered every guest, Nathan realized the next conversation would not simply uncover a corporate deception. It would determine whether a broken life could still be rebuilt upon the truth that had waited patiently all along. The rain finally stopped, leaving the streets of Chicago shining beneath the city lights as though the night itself had been washed clean. Inside the restaurant the atmosphere remained warm and peaceful, yet Nathan felt as though the entire world had shifted around him. He quietly stepped away from his table and accepted the secure video conference requested by corporate legal counsel. Daniel Cross appeared on the screen from a conference room accompanied by legal representatives. Nathan remained calm. There was no anger in his voice. Only certainty. One by one the recovered emails, archived correspondence, compliance records, and forgotten audio recording were presented for review. Daniel listened without interruption as every missing piece returned to its proper place. The silence that followed lasted several long moments before he finally lowered his eyes. He admitted that redirecting information had been easier than confronting someone whose integrity threatened everything he had built. He never expected the archived evidence to survive. Nathan thanked the legal team and instructed them to continue every remaining procedure according to company policy. The conference ended without celebration because the truth itself carried enough weight. Nathan returned to the dining room where Evelyn had just finished helping an elderly couple prepare to leave after celebrating their anniversary. She straightened a chair, wished them a safe evening, and quietly collected the empty coffee cups. She still had no idea that the final deception had collapsed only minutes earlier. Nathan walked toward her slowly. Linda noticed his expression and instinctively stepped aside without saying a word. The nearby conversations gradually faded as guests sensed something important was unfolding. Nathan stopped a respectful distance away. For 8 years I believed someone else's version of our story instead of trusting the woman who had always stood beside me, he said quietly. Today I finally learned the truth, and I cannot change the years my mistake took from you. Evelyn listened without interrupting, her expression peaceful and composed. Nathan continued. I was wrong. Completely wrong. I should have listened to you before I listened to fear. The restaurant remained perfectly silent. Linda lowered her eyes, realizing she had judged Evelyn with the same unfair certainty. After a long pause Evelyn answered with gentle honesty. The truth always arrives eventually. Sometimes it simply takes longer than our hearts expect. Nathan nodded, grateful that she had answered at all. Just as he believed the conversation had reached its end, Evelyn reached into her apron and carefully removed a neatly folded handwritten letter. She placed it into his hands with quiet confidence. I wrote this the day I left, she said softly. I never had the chance to give it to you. Nathan looked down at the unopened letter resting in his hands, suddenly understanding that even after discovering the truth about the past, the most important part of Evelyn's story had still never been heard. The restaurant remained wrapped in a peaceful silence after Evelyn placed the folded letter into Nathan's hands. The rain had ended, leaving tiny drops of water shimmering across the tall windows while the city lights reflected like quiet memories waiting to be understood. Nathan unfolded the letter with careful hands. Every line carried Evelyn's familiar handwriting, steady and graceful, exactly as he remembered. She had written it on the morning she left their home. She explained that she had discovered financial irregularities long before the investigation became public. She had tried several times to warn him, but every meeting had been interrupted by urgent decisions, trusted advisors, and carefully manipulated information that kept them further apart. When accusations finally surrounded her, she realized every attempt to defend herself only strengthened the false story being built around her. She believed that fighting publicly would damage Brooks Global, frighten investors, and place thousands of employees and their families at risk. Instead of protecting her own reputation, she chose to protect the company because she knew how many lives depended upon it. Nathan lowered the letter slowly. His eyes filled not with tears but with quiet understanding. For 8 years he had believed she walked away from him. The truth was far more painful. She had walked away to protect everything they had built together. Evelyn stood patiently beside the table, allowing him all the time he needed. She never asked whether he understood because she had never written the letter to prove herself right. She had written it simply to leave behind the truth. Linda watched from a respectful distance, no longer seeing a waitress. She now saw a woman whose quiet strength had carried a burden no one else had noticed. Nathan finally looked up. "Why did you never tell anyone?" he asked softly. Evelyn answered with the same calm dignity that had never left her. "Because truth does not become stronger when it is shouted. It becomes stronger when it survives." Those words settled over the room more powerfully than any speech Nathan had ever heard inside a corporate boardroom. His phone vibrated once again. His executive assistant confirmed that the Brooks Global Foundation records had been fully reconstructed overnight. Another forgotten document had surfaced, proving that an anonymous donor had quietly funded emergency assistance for employees affected by layoffs during difficult financial years. The donor had used the entire divorce settlement without revealing her identity. Nathan closed his eyes for a brief moment before looking back at Evelyn, realizing the greatest act of loyalty in his life had been carried out by the one person he had believed had abandoned him, and he suddenly understood that the future waiting before them could never be built upon regret alone but only upon the truth they had finally found together. The restaurant slowly returned to its quiet evening rhythm, yet nothing inside Nathan remained the same. He looked once more at the message from his executive assistant before opening the newly recovered foundation records. The documents traced years of anonymous charitable donations through carefully documented financial statements, each contribution arriving shortly after Brooks Global employees faced unexpected hardship. Families received emergency rent assistance. Children received scholarship support. Medical bills were quietly paid before anyone asked for help. Every donation came from the same anonymous account. Nathan studied the final authorization page until his breathing became still. The account had been funded entirely by Evelyn using every dollar from the divorce settlement she had accepted without argument years earlier. She had never purchased a larger home. She had never sought public recognition. She had never revealed the truth to him or anyone else. She had quietly transformed personal heartbreak into hope for strangers whose names she would never know. Nathan lowered the tablet and looked toward Evelyn, who was helping a young family settle comfortably near the window. She smiled warmly at their little boy, folded an extra napkin into the shape of a small bird, and placed it beside his plate before returning to refill another guest's coffee. The kindness that had once filled their home had never disappeared. It had simply continued reaching people without asking for applause. Nathan walked toward her carrying the printed foundation records. He stopped beside the service station and spoke gently enough that only she could hear. "You gave away everything." Evelyn glanced at the papers before meeting his eyes with quiet peace. "It was never my money to keep," she answered softly. "Many families needed it more than I did." Nathan struggled to understand such selfless generosity. "Why did you never tell me?" Evelyn smiled with the same calm dignity that had guided her through every difficult year. "Because kindness loses something precious the moment it begins asking to be remembered." Those words settled deeply inside him. Linda overheard the conversation and quietly stepped away, realizing that the strongest person in the restaurant had never been the billionaire or the manager but the woman who carried a serving tray with unwavering grace. Nathan carefully folded the documents and placed them back inside the envelope. At that moment his phone rang once more. The chairman of the Brooks Global Board personally requested his presence at sunrise, explaining that the directors had unanimously approved a proposal inspired by the newly discovered truth. Nathan listened silently before ending the call. He looked at Evelyn again, understanding that the meeting waiting tomorrow morning might restore her good name before the entire company, but nothing the board could approve would ever equal the quiet greatness she had already carried inside her heart for all those years. Morning sunlight spread across the skyline as Brooks Global headquarters welcomed its board of directors for an emergency meeting unlike any in the company's history. Nathan entered the conference room carrying the recovered files, Evelyn's handwritten letter, and years of regret that no business achievement could erase. Every executive listened as the complete investigation was presented from beginning to end. The hidden emails, the archived recording, the manipulated reports, and the financial evidence revealed a truth that could no longer be questioned. The board voted unanimously to clear Evelyn's name in every official record and to establish a permanent ethics initiative ensuring that no employee would ever again lose a voice because of influence or assumption. Nathan accepted every recommendation without hesitation. When the meeting concluded, he quietly drove back to the restaurant where the previous evening had changed his life forever. Evelyn was arranging fresh flowers near the entrance before the lunch guests arrived. She looked up with the same peaceful expression that had greeted every customer, never expecting recognition. Nathan thanked her for the courage she had shown long before anyone knew the truth. He explained the board's decision and offered to restore every opportunity she had lost. Evelyn listened carefully before smiling with gentle gratitude. She accepted the apology but declined every position, title, and financial reward. She explained that peace had become more valuable than status and that serving people with kindness had taught her lessons no executive office could provide. Nathan understood. Respect could never be purchased. It could only be earned. Before leaving, he asked whether they might share a cup of coffee someday. Without discussing the past. Evelyn agreed with a quiet smile, not as a promise to return to what had been, but as a chance to begin again with honesty instead of misunderstanding. Weeks later Brooks Global introduced new employee protection programs, anonymous ethics reporting, family assistance funds, and leadership training centered upon humility and accountability. Linda continued managing the restaurant, carrying a deeper appreciation for the quiet strength she had once overlooked. Guests still recognized Evelyn as the gracious waitress who remembered names, noticed small details, and made ordinary evenings feel meaningful. Nathan occasionally visited for coffee, never asking for special treatment, always grateful for simple conversation. They discovered that forgiveness does not erase history. It transforms the future. Outside the restaurant, another gentle rain began falling across Chicago, but this time neither of them feared the storm. They had finally learned that the strongest hearts are often the quietest, and that the people the world overlooks are sometimes the very ones who carry enough grace to change it forever. The quiet ones are never truly ordinary.